welcome to another episode of the Byproduct podcast. I am your host, Ian Pruckner, and I'm excited to spend a few minutes with you today getting better together, because when we get better, things get better. When we get better, things get better. I'm excited to be joined today by a new friend who's quickly becoming a good friend, Sir Darren Jacklin. Darren, good to see you. Welcome to the show.
I'm grateful to be here, Ian. Thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to be here to make a difference.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. And so, obviously, we got to talk about the Sir. Where did that come from, right? Okay. And the very few people these days have that sort of honor to be walking around with that title. But serial entrepreneur, you've done a lot of amazing things in your life. Currently sitting on the board of directors for EXP Realty, one of the biggest real estate companies in the world, if not the biggest, right? You probably can give us some insight on that.
Sure.
Changing a lot of people's lives. You are a philanthropist. You give like crazy. You've trained people all over the world in leadership, in sales, in personal development. I mean, you're really sort of like a Renaissance man in a lot of ways. You had an incredible journey in your life. Things weren't always the way they are now. You've come from some pretty dark places, and you've shined some pretty bright light. And author of the new book, Until I Become, which I'm reading through right now. I'm loving the book. You've got the letter to yourself in there, the letter to your younger self. Absolutely phenomenal. Want to talk about that a little bit. So Darren, welcome to the show. Tell me about the Sir. I mean, how did this happen? So are you Give us a little bit of insight there.
Yeah, so I'm actually officially knighted as a knight. It's legal. I can put it on a driver's license or on a passport. So a couple of years ago, as an entrepreneur, I'm networking. I'm always out traveling the world, charity events, fundraising events, speaking at conferences, conventions all over the world. And we run across people from all different walks of life. And I've had a chance over the last decade to meet people who've been knighted by various different royal families around the world who are a sir, a lady, or a dame. And just like people who win Nobel Peace Prize winners, celebrities, movie stars, Olympic athletes, professional, business entrepreneurs and business professionals. So I have a must-meet list that's in my book, Until I Become. You may have got to that chapter yet where I have 100 people I want to meet around the world every year. And because all we are is a network of conversations. And so I've had a chance to meet a handful of people who've been knighted over the last decade, who are a sir, a lady, or a dame, various different people. And to me, networking is a contact sport. And to me, it's all about building relationships equity. So people get to know you, like you, and trust you. And so just a couple of years ago, during the COVID-19 global pandemic lockdown, I was nominated by two people who've actually been knighted already. As a sir and a lady. And so there's a global nomination committee. And so I got notified that I was nominated by two people in good standing that were knighted. And so I'm thinking, okay, great. Happy to receive the nomination. What are the odds statistically of me of ever being knighted? I'm thinking like winning the lottery. And so I asked, as part of the discovery process, how many people right now globally have been nominated? And they said over 400 applications right now globally have been nominated. I'm like, okay. So statistically, what are the chances of me actually being knighted? And I thought, slim chance, because there's people around the world who are much more experienced with their history and experience and qualified than I am. So as we started to go through the discovery and due diligence process, it's like a 6-month process from start to finish. They do background checks, they do social media audits, they do police background checks, Interpol. They do a deep dive of due diligence on you in terms of your character, your integrity, your history, experience. And so as I started going through the discovery process, I started to realize I'm getting shortlisted. I realized, wow, I have a good statistical chance of being nominated here. And so I met with the royal family a few different times in person and virtually on Zoom video conferencing. And so there's 8 different categories that one would get knighted as a sir, a lady, or a dame. And the 2 categories that I was nominated for, Ian, was in the areas of philanthropy and global business entrepreneurship. And so I got nominated. And so out of the 400 plus applicants, they narrowed it down to 24 men and women, 15 men and 9 women globally. And I was one of 2 Canadian citizens to be nominated knighted. So if you look at Sir Richard Branson, Sir Elton John, Sir Paul McCartney, just to name drop some people's names, these are well-known names. They're getting up there in age. If you look at Sir Richard Branson, Sir Paul McCartney, they're in their mid to late 70s now. So I'm what they call the next generation. I'm 50 years of age now. So I'm the next generation of people to be united globally around the planet. So people always ask me, what does it do for you? What's in it for you? Well, what it does, it gives you access and influence. Two key things. It gives you access, opens up a lot of doors of possibilities, gets you to be able to have conversations with people you normally would never have access to.
Sure.
Because as human beings, all we are is a network of conversations. And we can unpack that throughout this podcast interview if you want in regards to expand on that. What does that really mean? But so when I got knighted, official ceremony, I got my sword, I got all my documentation to verify everything, got sworn in, all that, took my oath. And it was really an incredible experience. And if people go online and do a bit of research, they'll see there's lots of documentation online on my social media channels of video and pictures of the official ceremony with the royal family and me being knighted and stuff. So it's online. People can check it out online. But it was an incredible experience. But at first I was like, I'm going to be private about it, not going to broadcast it, not going to put it out there publicly. And then a lot of my people in my inner circle came to me and said, Darren, wait a second here. You love serving people. You love making a difference in people's lives. You would do a disservice to humanity if you didn't put Sir in front of your name as Sir Darren Jacklin, because you can inspire other people and create possibility, because I never met a Sir before. Other than when I was traveling, I met a few different people the last couple of years at different charity events and fundraising events. But the majority of people on the planet will only see that on television or on the internet or in a magazine or a newspaper, but they'll never meet somebody face to face and have a conversation with somebody who's been knighted as a Sir, Lady, or Dame. And so I use it now to support and serve and inspire people, and I use it as leverage for our international family foundation that Tatiana and I created called Link Foundation, that we've committed $100 million over the next decade towards global philanthropy projects. So I use it as a way to serve more people and create more of a ripple impact in terms of transforming the human spirit of humanity.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you said you were inspiring people, so you've done that. So Knight just went on my goal list. Okay. Thank you, Darren. I appreciate that.
That's my pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. I'll invite you to the ceremony if I ever get lucky enough to do that. I appreciate that. No. So that's amazing. So you've talked a little bit about philanthropy. I love what you said. Networking is a contact sport, and we are the sum of the people that we associate with and the knowledge that we intake. And I think so many people, just underestimate the value of that network. But you are a voracious networker. We're going to get to that in a second. When I first met you, you were very quick to tell me about your love language. Your number one love language is service. You love serving people. You talked a little bit about serving people there. Tell me a little bit about sort of that mantra, because you are really an example of service. You live to help serve other people, to serve the global community, to make a difference and an impact.
Yeah, there's a book called The 5 Love Languages. It's been around for many years. Dr. Gary Chapman wrote the book. It's a New York Times bestselling book called The 5 Love Languages. In that, there's 5 different love languages, no particular order, but acts of service, quality time, gifts, physical touch, and words of affirmation. So my top 5 in order is, number 1 is acts of service, then words of affirmation, number 3 is quality time, 4 is gifts, and number 5 for me is actually physical touch. So when people meet me in live events and they want to come up and hug me or handshake or high five, I'm grateful to do it, but it doesn't mean anything for me. Like, you give me a hug, whether you give me a hug, I could care less. Whereas some people like Tatiana, the love of my life, my relationship, that's her number 1. And so we're completely the opposites. Her number 1 is physical touch. My number 1 is acts of service. My number 5 is physical touch, and her number 5 is acts of service. So we're completely the opposites, so opposites attract. And so when I meet people, all of our teams that work with us within our group of companies or our family foundation, I like to get to know what people's love languages are, so I know how to build rapport with them, but I also learn how to connect with them and build that relationship equity, that rapport with them, and so that they feel like, is our container that we're in within our group of companies or family foundation, that they feel supported, that someone's got their back and someone loves all over them. And so it's really important to get to know if you've got a family of children or nieces or nephews or grandchildren or a spouse or partner or significant other, get to know what their love languages are. And mine's acts of service. I love making a difference in people's lives. I love helping people out.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's so funny because my wife and I are the same as your wife and you in terms of we're the exact opposites, right? But what we've found, we've taught a lot of different marriage classes and seminars, and something that is really, close to our hearts is building the marriages and the families of entrepreneurs, people that maybe have different sets of stressors and circumstances than just your sort of average folks. One of the things and I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this. We did, the love language assessments and all of that, right when we got married. We've done them again numerous times over the years, and we were exact opposites, like you said. But what we've seen is we still have our predominant likes and the ways that we're wired. But for my wife and I, what was her number 5 and my number 1, right? That's actually come up to her number 3 spot. And the same for me. What's her number 1 and was my number 5 has come up higher into that. We've sort of adapted over time because it's such a strong desire for the other person in the relationship. We've sort of learned how to make that something that we find more enjoyment in providing than we had before. Have you ever seen anything like that in
Absolutely, for sure, yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that because the last 2 years I've invested a lot of time and money and resources into men's retreats where I'm actually physically connecting with other people, where they're hugging me, they're holding me, and things like that. So I purposely put myself into a very highly kinesthetic environment where physical touch is the dominant, and I'm really awkward and uncomfortable and I get weirded out about it. But it feels, I'm starting to really relax into it and feel a lot better. Yeah. But I tell you, I'm way out of my comfort zone doing it.
Yeah, so for those of you, when you see Sir Darren around, just make sure you give him a big hug. He's asking you right now to help him grow in that area. I'm just kidding.
I'm open to receiving and open to expanding, absolutely.
So you are on the board of directors of EXP Realty, which is a large publicly traded business. It's a very disruptive model. I mean, that business hit the real estate industry like an atomic bomb. I mean, it really was just revolutionary. And that's a big deal. I mean, sit on the board of directors for any sort of public company is an honor, but a company that size and that stature, how did you get there? I know we talked a little bit about that story, and it was really like sort of a story that everybody dreams about, right? Like you're at the right place, the right time with the right people, and all of a sudden you're part of something that just explodes beyond anything you could have imagined. Tell us that story.
Sure. So I write a daily journal. I handwrite every day. It's a daily non-negotiable, daily habit. I write out every day in my journal. I have a private conversation. I write out my top 10 personal promises, which are my goals that I have every day for myself. It's something I do every day. I write out my goals. I have over 7,000 written goals, and my target is to get to 10,000 written goals. And it's hard because every time I'm writing down goals, I'm checking off and achieving goals. And I have, immediate goals that are within the next 7 days to 30, 60, 90, 120 days to 10, 20, 30 years from now, 50 years from now goals. So over the 7,000 goals. And so in 2011, I was traveling the world as a corporate trainer, 276 days a year globally around the world, a calendar year. And I was flying from San Francisco to New York on United Airlines. And I wrote down that I wanted to, in 2011, get onto paid advisory boards and paid boards of directors of public and private companies. Now, I have no formal education. I have a very interesting backstory of a lot of adversities and failures and challenges and setbacks. And so what I did is I started writing down that I wanted to be on paid advisory boards, paid boards of directors. So then I made a list in my journal of all these men and women that I knew across North America that served, whether it was a volunteer capacity or a paid capacity, on advisory boards and boards of directors from all different walks of life. And then over a series of months, I went and I interviewed all these men and women in person over, lunches and breakfasts and dinners, telephone calls, Skype, Zoom calls. And everybody said to me, Darren, listen, you don't have a PhD, you don't have an MBA, you have no formal academic education, no college university degree. It's wishful thinking, but you're not going to get onto a paid board of directors or a paid advisory board of a big corporation, a multi-million or multi-billion-dollar company. It's just not going to happen. And I'm just like, well, why would you limit your mindset, right? Why would you put yourself into a box and limit yourself? And so I just wrote down, I'm going to get onto paid advisory boards, paid board of directors. Just like for many years, I always have a daily affirmation. I get paid to travel the world and do what I love and love what I do. I get paid handsomely to travel the world and do what I love and love what I do. And I'd say that over and over and over and over and over again until eventually it became to reality where, I did travel the world for 25 years all over the world and got paid to travel it very handsomely. So in 2013, I received a telephone call living in Vancouver, Canada. from a high net worth family in Canada. And they said, Darren, we're looking at investing in this, technically a startup company, EXP Realty at the time. EXP started in 2009, but in 2010, 11, and 12, we were in a downturn in the marketplace. And, we look back on history during that time, it was doom and gloom for a lot of people. Yeah. And so what happened was this family said, listen, would you be willing to fly from Vancouver back to where we are at your own financial expense and be part of our team through the discovery and due diligence process? We're looking at investing in this company. And EXP at the time had less than 200 people in the whole company. Technically, it was a startup company. We had no money, building airplanes or flying it. But the founder, Glenn Sanford, an incredible man that people should study or research. This guy is incredible human being to follow and study in business and entrepreneurship of what he's done. I have a lot of respect and admiration for Glenn, and I know him very, very well and work very closely with him. So in 2013, I flew back. Now, people say, why would you fly back at your own expense when this isn't your deal? This is a family who's obviously got a lot of money. They've done very well. They should buy you the airplane ticket and pay for your travel accommodations. What I wanted was two things. One is I wanted a seat at the table, and I wanted to be in the conversation. And that's the key thing is two things. You want a seat at the table, and you want to be in the conversation. Because everything that you want happens through a conversation, through a network of people. So what I did is I flew back at my own expense. I wanted to sit at the table and I wanted to be in the conversation as part of the discovery and due diligence process. So we went over a course of several months back and forth. Finally, the family came and said, do you think we should invest? I said, absolutely. I love this business model. And I love Glenn, the founder. I love his integrity. I love his heart. I love his character. I love his ethics. And I love who he is as a human being and how he wants to serve and make a difference in humanity. So the family decided to invest money, and what they wanted was they wanted me to become an independent board of directors. So I became the first independent board of directors of EXP. So there was just a small little group of us, not very big, and we had big goals and big dreams. And we had a lot of people laughed at us, made fun of us, criticized us, because I get people saying, listen, Darren, you're talking a really big game, but I've never seen one of these EXP real estate signs in my neighborhood. Darren, I know a lot of licensed real estate agents because I'm a mortgage broker or I'm a notary public or I'm a lawyer, and I've never met an EXP agent in my neighborhood. So, you don't know what you're talking about. And for years, I was criticized. And, today, EXP Realty, at the time of this conversation, is the fastest growing residential real estate company on the planet today.
Yeah.
We're the fastest growing. And if people do their research and look at our history, since 2009 to where we are today, it's unbelievable, the case study of what we've accomplished in terms of our metrics. It's incredible. And so I'm really grateful today to serve still actively on EXP World Holdings. We're a publicly traded company on NASDAQ. I've had a chance not once, not twice, but 3 times now to go to New York City to ring the closing bell at NASDAQ. And I serve on a couple other paid boards of directors as well. That I have a chance to potentially go back again to ring a closing bell or an opening bell at NASDAQ. So who would ever thought a guy like me, coming from a small town in Canada, Swift Current, Saskatchewan, Canada, with no formal education, would go to NASDAQ and ring the closing bell 3 times and serve on a board of directors of a company that was a startup that today is a multi-billion-dollar company that's now the fastest-growing residential real estate company on the planet.
Yeah, that's amazing. What an amazing story. In your book, Until I Become, towards the beginning of the book, you've got it's sort of a chapter, sort of not a chapter, but it's a letter to your younger self is what you call it. And you had alluded to, Darren, that you've been able to travel the world and be paid very well. You're on these boards. You're a knight, for goodness sakes, right? Like you've done some pretty amazing things in your life. But it wasn't always that way. And in the letter to yourself, you sort of touch on that, some of the struggle and the darkness that you had to deal with earlier, what you would say, knowing now what what you would say to that younger version of yourself. Tell us your story, if you would. Where did you come from? What did you overcome to get there?
That's the younger self, the version of it right there. So really unique backstory. So I failed grade 1 of public school, and it was misdiagnosed with a learning disability and a reading disability by the school system. And so I failed grade 1. I was put into what we call special education. So I never went to regular public school like most of the other kids. And so from grade 1 all the way through to grade 12, I was in special education classes. And it really affected my self-confidence, my self-worth. My parents did the best they could. We were in a small city of less than 20,000 people in population. My parents didn't know any better. And so when I was 7 years of age, I created my first business called Rent a Kid. And I talk about it in my book, Until I Become, that I would go out and I would knock on doors. And one of the things I talk about in Until I Become is some of the habits and life lessons that I learned. And one of the practical life lessons I learned is that whatever you lack in skill, you make it up in numbers. So I didn't have the skill of self-confidence and sales skills and being charismatic because I was a special education kid. I was very low self-confident, couldn't make eye contact, didn't have high self-belief in myself. So whatever you lack in skill, you make it up in numbers. So I would just go knock on lots and lots of doors in my neighborhood, cutting grass, shoveling snow in the wintertime, delivering newspapers 6 days a week. And then as I got a little older, I was very insecure about meeting girls in school. So I used to take 10 Canadian pennies, put them in my left pocket secretly, and every day I'd say good morning, hello, hi, hello, and I'd just have a conversation with girls. And every time I said hello to a girl, and she said hi or good morning or good afternoon back to me, I would secretly transfer a penny from my left pocket to my right pocket. And the game I played every day was three steps in terms of metric game. Number one is, what is my personal promise? And my personal promise, step number one, was 10 conversations. I wanted to have 10 conversations with a woman so I could transfer each time a penny and transfer 10 pennies every day. So that was number one. Step number one is my personal promise was 10. Then my actual, how many conversations have I actually had? And then step number three is, what is my gap? So every day I would be, what's my promise? What's my actual? What's my gap? What's my promise? What's my actual? What's my gap? And that was my 3-step metric system that I would do. And I used to play this game, and I still do this to this day in our companies, when I'm investing in companies, when I'm buying companies, doing acquisitions. We still do that to this day. I don't metric how many, I metric how many conversations I'm having with people. And so to me, what it was is I had this way to build my self-confidence and my belief. Now, when I got into junior high and high school, I didn't do well academically. And in grade 11, I was taken out of class one day by a guidance counselor and a school teacher. And they said, Darren, based on your academics marks, you'll probably not graduate from grade 12. You'll never go to college, never go to university because you're never going to get there. And kids like you are what we call a throwaway kid. And, based on your performance of school, you're probably not going to amount to much. You might get a farm labor job or work in the oil patch or work in a government agency, but you're not going to ever do much. And then they asked me, this guidance counselor and school teacher, Darren, if you do leave high school and you plan to do something, what do you want to do? I said, I want to travel around the world. I want to make a lot of money. I want to have a lot of fun. I want to make a big difference in the world. And they both looked at each other and they started to laugh and said, Darren, you're never going to have an MBA or a PhD or never amount to much. Those are pipe dreams. But I believe that, I could do stuff. And so to me, what I realized at a very young age through childhood trauma, this came from trauma, was that as human beings, all we are is a network of conversations. And what I learned through trauma was 2 key things: requests and promises. And I talk about this in Until I Become, my book, that first thing you want to do is you want to make a personal promise to yourself. So if we did a survey, we went around any city or town in North America or international, we went around and we just randomly talked to 100 people at a shopping mall. And we asked the same question to 100 people. What is it you really, 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 really want in your life? And I've done this many times. The number one consistent answer is, I don't know. If you survey most people on the planet, they do not have clearly defined, written down goals of what they want in their life, personally or professionally. There's no evidence of it. There's no documentation. And one of the things that I do, and I talk about this Until I Become, is everything I do is structured into my calendar. I have structure in my calendar because everything I want to do in my life, of my 7,000 goals, I structured into my calendar, because I always share with people, if you don't structure it into your calendar, it doesn't live in your life because there's no evidence of it ever demonstrated in your life. So people say, Darren, they come to me, they go, Darren, I'm a real estate agent. I want to make more money. Great. Show me your calendar for the next 7 days and show me where you have revenue generating activities or income producing activities. Darren, I want to create generational wealth for my family. Great. How many courses have you taken in the last 12 months on generational wealth planning? What podcasts, books, audios, seminars, courses, mentors, coaches, mastermind groups are you a part of on creating generational wealth? Where does it demonstrate in your calendar that you're actually committed to doing that?
Yeah.
And so I've learned things to implement into my life through trauma, because, I would go, when I was younger, I would go to these seminars And people, when I was in my 20s, they invite me to seminars. And I would go there and I'd leave depressed. Because here I am, I'm flat broke financially. I'm just scrambling, hustling, grinding to just pay my rent on time, right? Pay my bills on time. And this guy's getting up and talking about some sports car or some trip he's going on. I'm thinking, man, I can't relate to that. I'm just trying to pay my bills on time. And so I would leave depressed from seminars. And so I was one of these guys that seminars really messed me up. And that's why today, when I've traveled the world and trained so many people, why I was very good at practical results, because I was the guy that got messed up by going to seminars and workshops. It really screwed me up. I actually left beaten up and torn up even worse because I felt so bad about myself, through a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. So what I did is, through a lot of adversities and challenges and failures, I realized what are some practical stuff. And that's why I created Until I Become the book, because it's less than 100 pages, because I wanted a book that could teach people no fluff, no filler, cut out the sizzle, cut out the fluff, give people a practical roadmap of how they can achieve things. Because, I'm a guy that was once homeless on the streets living on welfare. Today, like yourself, I'm a multimillionaire today. I'm a guy that used to have an R9 credit rating, which is the worst possible case credit score you can get. I was so flat broke that a friend of mine let me live in his treehouse, that I've got pictures in the book of the treehouse. Like, I never went to college, never went to university. I was a kid you would never bet on. I'm, in just a couple months, I'm hiking Mount Kilimanjaro at 19,340 feet. And 3 years ago, I was fat and overweight, eating junk food. I was the guy that pigged out at the buffet, right? So I'm the guy that you would never, ever bet on. But if you study my life, it comes down to daily habits and daily routines and two key things: requests and promises. Number one is, what do you promise? What's your personal promises or your goals? And then to help facilitate that, because here's the cool thing I talk about in Until I Become, and this just blows people's mindset, is most of your goals and dreams do not require your actions. So I have over 7,000 written goals, but most of my goals and dreams do not require my actions. What it requires to creating teams and teamwork, so you can delegate responsibilities but maintain control. So you go from doing the goals to directing the goals to having other people, which is called other people. Just like in money, we call it other people's money. Well, you can leverage other people's time, other people's energy, other people's experiences, other people's knowledge. So I leverage other human beings through a network of conversations. And so what I do is I talk about making requests. For every question that we don't ask, the answer is always no. So whatever you really, really want in your life, if you just start making requests, people only do one of three things. They'll either accept the request, they'll decline the request, or they'll counteroffer the request. So start making lots and lots of requests. And sometimes you got to make unreasonable requests or outrageous requests or powerful requests. But start making requests and allow people to choose powerfully whether they accept, decline, or counteroffer.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. I love it. And I love the title, Until I Become, because you are becoming, right? Like, we're all becoming, but you've been a great example of, like, homeless, living in your friend's treehouse, on the board of a public company and hiking Mount Kilimanjaro and doing all sorts of things that people told you would never do. And I think there's a lot of great joy and satisfaction you probably get in doing and living the life that people told you couldn't live, you couldn't have. So real quick here, Darren, as we sort of wrap up, if you had to give somebody just one piece of advice, right? A new entrepreneur, somebody who's maybe struggling, they're not sure if they have what it takes, what would you tell that person?
Two questions. Number one is, where are you not requesting in your life? So question number one is, take a look at your life, do an audit of your life. Look around your life. Whatever area of your life is not working, that's not giving you joy or fulfillment or satisfaction, that's not where you're making requests. So give an example. Let's look at relationships. Let's, for example, somebody watches right now is in a relationship and their spouse or partner, they're not doing date nights because they've got a busy life, they've got children or family, or they don't have the money. So the key thing is, how can you get resourceful in asking your neighbor to look after your kids, asking a relative or a family or a friend or somebody you trust to look after your kids, so you can take your spouse or partner on a date night or take them away for a couple hours. So number one is, where am I not requesting in your life? And number two is, who do you become when you're not making requests? So question number one is, where am I not requesting? And number two is, who do you become when you're not making requests? The reason why is, when you're not making requests, you're playing a really small game in life. You're actually contracting, not expanding. You're coming from lack and scarcity rather than abundance and prosperity. We're blessed to live on this planet. We are truly blessed. We are truly blessed by God, spiritual creator, whatever you believe. We are blessed to live on this planet. And what I would say is that for people who are struggling, because I've had a lot of adversities and challenges, and when I go back through my journals over the years and retrace my steps, I realized that I was not setting bigger goals. And when I realized that when I would say, darn, my plate is full, then I got to bring another plate to the buffet. Just get a different plate. Because there's somebody out there who's playing a much bigger game than you and I, and they have systems and strategies and processes on what they do. And that's what I realized early on is I'm a visionary. I didn't have the structure, the systems, and the processes. And that changed everything for me when we started to implement structure and systems and processes. And everything I wanted, I put into my calendar. And I structured my calendar and lived by my calendar with reminders. Another thing is your integrity. I didn't have integrity growing up. And then in my 20s and 30s, I had selective integrity. Okay? And I was selective on my integrity. I was in and out of my integrity all the time. And what I realized, I didn't have workability and people didn't trust me. And I blew up a lot of relationships in my 20s and 30s because of that, because of my lack of integrity. And what I realized from adversities and challenges and being flat broke more than once is that time will either promote you or time will expose you. It's just a matter of time. And I got exposed, just like my health. I got exposed by being fat and overweight. So I took my life seriously, and that's why I'm climbing Mount Kilimanjaro as a higher target. So in life, when it comes to money, we don't have money problems in life. We only have thinking problems in life. There's no lack of money on the planet. There's people who have money problems. They make a lot of money, don't know how to allocate it and deploy it. And I think you and I have been in that situation before a few times, right? But so the thing is that in our lives, our integrity is so important because behavior never lies. And I see so many people that shortcut, circumvent things. Remember this, money comes in all different shades of green. And throughout life, you're going to get tested. You got to know what shade of green of money you want to be around. And sometimes when people want to make the quick buck or they're hustling or grinding, they're like, oh, no big deal. I'll pay my taxes later. Or, I'll do something on the side, sell some drugs, whatever it is that people are doing. And that money's a different shade of green, but guess what? It's just a matter of time over a few years that money will catch up to you because of what you gave your word to, because your word creates your world. And if something was to leave today, remember that for the rest of your life. Your word creates your world. What you give your word to is your personal promise, and your word creates your world. And without integrity, nothing works. Yeah. And I've seen so many people who have circumvented and, like me, selective integrity or no integrity younger days. And I would build something and I would crash. Build something and crash. Because I had no strong foundation of integrity. Because you couldn't trust my word and neither could I trust my word.
Yeah. Wow. So good. Yeah. I talk about that all the time with the people that I lead. You got to keep your promises. And the number one person you got to keep the promises to is you. It starts with you. And if you don't trust you, nobody else is going to trust you. Right. And it starts by having a foundation of integrity within yourself. I love this. This has been so good, Darren. So many valuable nuggets. Where can people connect with you? If they want to learn more, if they want to get into your ecosystem, where can they find you?
Go to hikingfundraiser.com. We've created something, my team and I have created something called E2E, Elevate to Educate. I'm obsessed with hiking because of longevity today. I'm on this big longevity thing of living long life. And hiking has transformed my life. So I'm doing these hiking fundraising events all over North America. And we raise money for Link Foundation. People get a tax receipt. And then we build new schools for some of the most impoverished children on the planet, which people will see if you go to hikingfundraiser.com. And at hikingfundraiser.com, you can then connect to all my social media channels as well. I'd love to have you come out with your family, your children, your coworkers, to come out hiking with us and be part of the ecosystem, be part of our container, and come out and have some fun, great networking, great conversations, and work on your health and nutrition and your longevity.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Darren, where can they pick up the book?
Yeah, you can go to untilibecome.com, untilibecome.com, or you can go to Amazon if you're an Amazon shopper, and just go to Amazon and type in Until I Become.
Fantastic. Darren, listen, it has been an enormously enjoyable time together. What an incredible story. I know that you've inspired a lot of people. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time, your friendship, your leadership. Thank you for being a world changer, being bold enough to throw in the face of all the people who told you couldn't, you wouldn't, you shouldn't, and go become who you were supposed to be and living the life that you dreamed of and helping other people to do the same. So thank you so much for your time. I am eternally grateful. And thank you to all of you who've spent a few minutes with us listening today or watching, whatever you did. And listen, you are going to do something amazing in your life. Don't sell yourself short. Don't settle too early. There's something great right around the corner. If you refuse to give up, there's something special that you're going to be a part of. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, when we get better, things get better. Until next time, we'll see you soon.